This is the Brave Ideas Podcast, brought to you by Aqua. Welcome to episode 7 of the Brave Ideas Podcast, the show that is all about bringing to light exciting new ideas in the realms of digital and marketing. I'm Dan Herman, I'm a digital strategist, a comic book nerd, and a sophisticated robot from the future. And I'm here today with my co-host.
And I'm Sinead. I'm also a digital strategist here at Aqua, a cat lover and a Star Wars enthusiast. So before we get started today, we're going to give a special Brave Ideas shout out to someone who has shared or retweeted our podcast on social media. And this week we're going to say a very special thank you to Marcel Metodes. Thank you for the share, Marcel. And if you want to get a shout out, please share or retweet our show. And we'll pick a new fan to say thank you to each episode.
Today we're talking to Lisa Cohn, senior strategist at Aqua, radio personality, and emerging Jewish mother. And she's going to challenge the rise of the single mother family. Based on actually what you heard in the last episode that we had with Weinand Kutzer from Base 2. So Lise, what's on your mind?
Well, you missed the bit where it says rampant feminazi, which is kind of really where this is coming from, actually. And anybody who's caught me in the kitchen on a day where I'm wielding fists left, right, and centre will know this is true. So what's on my mind is that I listened to your podcast last week, and I had a couple of thoughts about what Weinand had to say. And the nutshell is that I don't think it's the emergence of the single mother family or the single parent family. I think it's the recognition of the single parent family, and I think that's what's important, is that as working in marketing and branding as we do, this isn't something new, and Brave Ideas is about recognizing new and emerging things. This is merely something that we've, as mainstream culture, caught onto finally after 100 years. Can
you provide a bit more context in terms of what you're talking about?
Yes.
I'm a bit
lost in the... Okay. So the nutshell is this, particularly in the South African context. Weinand last week was talking about American stats and American and Northern European or Western European kind of history. And if we look at South African history, it's really like this. Most women haven't had a choice but to work, making money and providing for their families for the last long while. And it begins with when men had to leave for the mines. And women had to start working and providing for their families as well. I think what's interesting about the so-called single-parent family in South Africa is that it's not really a single-parent family, and we all know the African saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And what's interesting about that is that in many South African families, it's not a case of 2 parents and 2.4 kids. It's a case of 1 parent and several generations living together. And that's generally the framework for traditional family in South Africa and in Africa at large. So you'll have grandparents, you'll have a mom or a dad, and you'll have kids all living together in a big extended family.
So I think if I just have to round up what you're saying is basically that it's not something new. It's basically that we're recognizing this. So are we recognizing that? Is there evidence of us from a media perspective, I guess, recognizing that family unit?
Well, it's not a case of really just recognizing the extended family as a family unit. What's coming into the mainstream from a marketing point of view is recognizing finally that the role of the mother or the father is different. So what we're doing is recognizing that dad isn't the only breadwinner and recognizing that mom isn't staying at home with the laundry and the kids. And I think that's the important part. So where Weinand touched on it last week was talking about the fact that we can't talk to demographic-based marketing anymore. What we have to do is talk to the whole consumer. So mom doesn't stay home with the laundry. She also works and has multiple interests. And dad isn't bringing home the bucks. Everybody's bringing home the bucks, particularly in this economy. And
so much more like multifaceted...
Consumer, exactly. The multifaceted consumer, regardless of demographic, regardless of kind of what income level we're talking to.
But Lisa, okay, I get it, right? I understand what you're saying. Obviously, things aren't really black and white. The nuclear family is a manifestation of some sort of ideal that's been created, and naturally people have lived in very diverse family units throughout history,
Correct.
Let alone in South Africa in the last 50 years. And
Absolutely.
I don't think that necessarily that was Weinand's point. I think it's a case of what people want to hear is changing, as opposed to what people what the reality is on the ground. So historically, people have wanted to hear about these nuclear family values and these nuclear family ideals, but now today they want to hear more around. They're becoming more familiar with LGBT families, with divorced families, and so what I'm trying to sort of get from you is like, so yes, it is about recognizing the reality that's always existed, but are we recognizing a change in how consumers are now perceiving families?
Absolutely, and to which I say hallelujah. So the point that Weinand made about the patriarchy, which is kind of, I wish I could say was an outdated term. It's not an outdated term. It used to be, and this was an interesting conversation actually I had with my father a couple of weeks ago. In his generation, in my parents' generation, in our parents' generation, feminism existed within the context of the family, in the sense that the barriers that women were breaking were within the context of the family. The struggle to go back to work, the struggle to be recognized within that context beyond homemaker. In our generation, and this is where it gets kind of interesting, feminism exists within the context of something called intersectional feminism. And I'm not going to get too higher grade about it, but the nutshell is that we understand feminism within a much broader framework. We understand feminism within the framework of how it intersects with racism. We understand feminism within the framework of how it intersects with LGBTI issues. And this is particularly an issue in South Africa, where the patriarchy, our president, Zuma, sees himself as a patriarchal figure and acts very much like the figurehead of an old-fashioned family. Like he needs to, in inverted commas, protect and provide for South Africa in a certain way, and he has the right to take certain things for South Africa in a certain way. So the patriarchy exists outside of the family unit, and things are shifting, and people are rebelling and changing values in a certain way. So the values of the country and individuals within the context of the family and within the context of their lives are changing, and people are accepting that. And that's the good part. That's where we, from a marketing framework, have a role to play.
So, I mean, I think you've answered my question.
In a very complex way. Let me make it simple.
I feel like I'm just trying to understand, from your perspective, how has what consumers want to hear changed, and is there still a role for nuclear family communication to exist within the world today, given that?
And I just wanted to say something as well. Is it what they always wanted to hear? I don't know if I feel comfortable with that either.
I'm not that comfortable with that either. It's not only about what they want to hear. It's about, we have, and I think companies accept that as companies, as corporate entities, we have a role to play in society in terms of responsibility. If we are responsible marketers, we have a role to play. And our role is to be self-reflective and self-aware and promote the right agendas without being Bible bashing about it. And to be parallel with the values that society are beginning to embrace in terms of LGBTI issues, in terms of women issues, feminist issues, that's our role. In other words, we need to be self-aware, reflect on the work we're doing, and make sure that they don't cross boundaries in terms of feminism, in terms of politically incorrect. Step on toes. We mustn't step on toes.
Lisa, I know we were speaking about it earlier, but the example of something that has done that in the past is kind of a key takeout.
So a couple of weeks ago, we all know there was that Bud Light campaign in the States, which was like, OMG, I can't actually believe they did that. It was the Up For Whatever campaign, and they were very quickly taken down. And it said, perfect beer for removing no from your vocabulary. And in the context of the American campus rape issues that are coming to light left, right, and center, it was so inappropriate as to be actually ridiculous. It was basically encouraging rape culture.
But I think it's a great point, like the example of just being self-aware and being aware of your context that you speak in.
And being responsible marketers.
And it goes beyond even feminism. So I was giving you the example earlier of what happened very recently with appetizers.
Absolutely.
So they tweeted a quote, which is, "Every brunette needs a blonde best friend," which is just quite sweet. And I've seen that on Pinterest a few times, and it's, I've got a blonde bestie, so it's all good. But they tweeted it along with an image of a black woman standing side by side to a blonde, blue-eyed
white
young
girl
lady. And it spurred, Twitter went crazy, it spurred a lot of controversy. Everyone was very upset. They found it very kind of ignorant, very patronizing, and very racist.
Well, see, I think this is what's so nice about being digital marketers, is that the internet keeps us honest to some degree. Social media plays a big role in this, and that if something goes too far, people are on it, and they're going to keep us honest.
Whoa.
Okay.
Things are spiraling out of control. This love fest in the corner is about to stop.
Really?
No, I'm joking.
Nice try.
Listen up. So I think that, what I'm hearing is the following, right? There's this idea around being a self-aware, responsible marketing, being sensitive to changes in the
values of society,
in the value landscape, and in the family unit. On the other hand, you have brands that are trying to elicit a response for consumers and engage with people on social media in a way that they can connect with through this bite-sized, frivolous, micro-content type of approach that they generally go wrong. And the examples you start around, Bud Light and Appetizer, are great examples of brands that are go wrong. On the other hand, I think it's like what's really quite hectic is how the voice of the internet has become this all-controlling, all-seeing entity that is trying to clamp down at irresponsible marketing to the point of actually preventing brands from being creative or trying to do innovative things. So so I'm just trying. So what I'm trying to get to here is that not to say that it's right to do that. It's right to create content that upsets and frustrates people. On the other hand, when did the voice of the internet become more powerful than the voice of the individual consumer who wants to consume a piece of engaging content?
Here's the thing, the voice of the internet is the voice of the consumer. That is your consumer. Those are the people you want to buy your product, A. B, I'm not talking about being PC to ridiculous degrees. What I'm saying is that it's an iterative approach. Like, we're all learning. We all have subconscious attitudes that may not be in line with the kind of people we want to be. I still find myself saying things that are like, whoa, check yourself, So the point is, it's a learning experience. Put things out, test them, but check yourself. Nobody expects you to be perfect.
But you see, my thing is check yourself against what values, whose values. Like, how does a brand determine the values upon which it needs to communicate with? And do those values need to align to necessarily a minority group of? I'm just saying minority.
Who's the minority?
Well, it could be in the United States, it could be a minority. It could be any sort of LGBT communities. Could be ethnic communities.
Here's
it could be varied minorities. Who are consumers targeting?
Okay.
So where does it all go?
Well, this is the thing. That's a very big discussion, because the thing is, government's becoming, to some degree, less powerful, and brands are becoming more powerful. And we've got to align ourselves with the values of today, of our contemporary culture. And checking the pulse of the values of contemporary culture, we're moving more towards liberal values, to which I say hallelujah. Okay, but not everybody does. You still got the throwbacks who are like, no, we need to teach creationism.
So do you think it then becomes up to the brand to determine their own value? So
yes, it does.
For example, I was
by them.
I was in the States when they did the Gay Pride Oreo.
Yes.
And there was huge outcry. They didn't apologize for it. They kind of took it in their stride, and they were happy to stand behind that. So it's...
Let me put it this way. There is a retailer in the States, and I cannot name which one, so I'm not even going to try, but it's one of the big retailers who... wait, I'm going to try. I am going to try. It's Hobby... I can't even remember. They're a staunchly Christian retailer. That is the values of their founders, and that is the values of their company, and they won't support abortion rights, and they won't support LGBTI issues, and that is their values. And their marketing and their branding and everything, right from their employment policies, aligns with those values. That's what they do. Fine. Let the legal lobby deal with that. whether or not it's in line with the law of the land.
But also customers can
choose to shop there or not.
Okay, so I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think it's very interesting that you're talking about a Christian group, a Christian brand that is fundamentalist Christian brand that is trying to connect with Christian consumers without caring. I mean, another example of that is ISIS.
Yes,
I mean, ISIS are a powerful brand, right? A powerful religious Islamic brand that content surrounds the beheading of journalists.
Yes.
And while the majority of the world totally abhors what they're doing, the fact is that thousands of foreign fighters flow into Iraq and Syria to replenish their ranks. So they're very effective, and they don't care what people think.
Correct.
So
I'm sincerely hoping that none of our brands are aligned with that, but nevertheless...
so what I'm saying is that
consistent.
Actually, ISIS are terrible, and what they do is completely fundamentally wrong. But they stick to their values.
Yes.
They are effective in achieving their business objectives.
Yes.
And they don't care what other people think.
Correct.
And what are the risks of that? Appetizer or Bud Light, for example. Bud Light may be an inherently masculine brand, for example.
Being a masculine brand's okay, but they
may have anti-feminist values. That may appeal to their target market.
But see, I don't think that's what they are. I think they're trying to walk a line, and they were trying to be cheeky. I think they were trying to be cheeky without being offensive, and they missed the mark. And you know what? Like I said, it's a process of education. That's okay.
And testing,
And testing. Nobody's saying you have to be PC all the time, but you do have to learn. And also, you should be sensitive to the environment you work in. You know what I mean? Given the fact that in terms of the US environment, the rape culture on campus was a big issue, you don't go out and say, take no from her vocabulary by making her drunk. You don't do that. You just don't. Bad move.
So, Lise, I mean, I think we've spoken about already a lot of issues.
Yes,
really deep looking around the values of society, the feminazism, as you would call it.
I wouldn't call it feminazism. I'd call it straightforward respect for humanity, but that's okay.
But I think that what I think is really important is that we try to understand what is the key takeout for the people at Aqua and in the broader sort of
marketing sphere. Okay, so what I would really say is, firstly, be self-aware, and the second point is educate yourself. And there's a very, very good resource. It can be a little humorless, so take it in bite-sized chunks. It's called everydayfeminism.com, and it educates you in small bite-sized chunks about intersectional feminism and how it relates to other key issues of society, such as race and LGBTI issues. So subscribe to their newsletter and educate yourself, and be self-aware in the work you do and in your interactions with the people you work with.
Thanks, Lise. And just if people want to find out more about you, how do they contact you?
They catch me in the kitchen when I'm making coffee. Or they email me at lisac@aquaonline.com.
Cool. Thanks, Lise. Thanks for that. That was deep. Now let's move on to the tool of the week.
Okay, cool. So this week's tool of the week is called Macaw. And Macaw is a web design tool that auto-generates HTML and CSS coding from the design that you create. And it works really, really similarly to a lot of other image editing software. So if you're familiar with things like Photoshop and Illustrator, you'll find the interface quite easy and simple to use. And the idea behind the tool is that it speeds up the design and development process by enabling the creation of a single project, and you can do everything from wireframing to design and coding, and it results in a final website design. So I was checking it out last night. Really, really some cool stuff in there. You can add some breakpoints into your layout so you can test the responsiveness of your design. You can preview on different devices. They've got global styling facilities. You can pull in web fonts for your typography, etc. So it's really, really a nice tool. And in an agency like Aqua, it can be used to set up basic coding frameworks for developers who can then obviously innovate on top of that and to create a rich and engaging web and mobile experience. And it really does just streamline the entire process and create business efficiencies. And you can learn more about Macaw at their website, which is macaw.co, and that's macaw.co, and also just check out a lot of the tutorials on YouTube.
Thanks for listening to the Brave Ideas podcast. A special thank you to Lisa, our special guest, for coming. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, give us a rating and a review. We need your support to get this podcast out there. You can also visit aquagroup.libsyn.com for the complete library of episodes. That's aquagroup.libsyn.com. If you want to keep up to date with new shows, you can follow Aqua Agency on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can also find the podcast on Instagram at Brave Ideas Podcast. If you want to keep in touch with me, you can follow me, Dan, at Elhermo, that's ELHERMO, on Twitter, and Elhermo23, ELHERMO23 on Instagram and Snapchat.
And I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Feeling Disco, and that's disco with a K.
If you have a brave idea that you want to share on this podcast, please email us at braveIdeas@aquaonline.com to submit your thoughts. We would love to have you on. Once again, thanks to Lisa. Thank you to Matthew Klawansky for music and production. Thanks to Gous, Johann, Botha, and Ernst for the art direction.
And that brings us to the end of the show, and we'll leave you with one final thought. There are no original ideas, only original people.